Hello again, everyone. My name is Tando Mate. I am going to be taking you through a masterclass on the lessons that we learned during the demolition of illegal settlements in Zimbabwe, in Harare specifically. So the founder at State of Tenure, where we focus on exploring the relationship between people, land, and power. I also run a startup called Spatial Sense, where we focus on GIS and mapping and our advancing geospatial technology in Africa. So in this masterclass, we're going to be talking about the process through which we result in the formation of unplanned settlements, the people and the systems responsible. We are also going to talk about how the demolitions were conducted in Harare, Zimbabwe, and in Zimbabwe as a whole. And we're also going to look at how that affected views on security of tenure. So as an introduction, I think in Africa in general, owning a property is a sport of sweat and tears. So when someone successfully acquires it, it is really an achievement which gives you an unmatched feeling. It is the seed of generational wealth. So now you can imagine the feeling that someone has when that property is taken away from them, having it demolished by government, being earmarked as an illegal development. This is the fate that most Zimbabweans came to see. So property demolitions are not something that are new in the country's history. It has happened before. The most popular one is in 2005, where you had 700,000 Zimbabweans who lost their homes during this operation. It was called Operation Murambatsvina. Murambatsvina means to get rid of filth. So subsequent occurrences of demolitions followed through local authorities across the country. That's in 2015, 2016, and then most recently during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021. So the targets for these demolitions were about 21,000 households, with most of them being located in the capital city, which is Harare. So those who are most affected are usually those who live in low-income communities and high-density locations, peri-urban zones, which were formerly peri-urban farms, and some informal businesses which operate along road servitudes. These are the most common victims of these property demolitions. So the reason for these demolitions is to take care of unplanned developments so that the city develops according to what is deemed as the master plan. Some of these reasons, especially in urban areas, is that the illegal developments serve as criminal hotspots, and they are used for drugs, for brothels, and so forth. So, however, despite the reasons for these demolitions, we would really like to find out if the strategy employed then protects the victim against the loss of land rights. So a complex system results in citizens becoming the victims of these demolitions, particularly through the creation of unplanned settlements is caused by criminal individuals known as land barons. These parcel out unregulated land and they front as housing cooperatives. And for the victims, those who do not know, because there are a lot of people looking for accommodation in Harare because of high rural to urban migration. A lot of people are really desperate and are seeking for places to stay and build and acquire land. So this whole system consists of these people, the desperate people, the local authorities, professionals who work in land and government, and politicians. A bit about these land barons. These people are protected by politicians to evade the rule of law. Some of these land barons are sitting members of parliament, ministers, and individuals who have very powerful connections to the ruling party and the government. So this was exposed by the Uchena Commission, which was initiated by the government to inquire on the sale of urban state land. So these bogus housing schemes are created the biggest reason being to secure votes to enable these individuals and their connections to stay in power. The land barons are really criminals who are protected by politicians. Some of them are part of government, some of them are not, but they have very strong connections to the government and the ruling party. So they create these housing schemes and unregulated land parcels and give them out to unsuspecting individuals for the simple reason of staying in power. So the homeowners who then acquire this land live under the threat of eviction if they do not vote for the person that enables them to access land. So really the citizens are really in between a rock and a hard place. So all this is enabled by corruption and power systems which currently run the land administration system together with government and sometimes private individuals. So some of these activities include the disappearance of documents, the skipping of procedures, and the forging of paperwork, receipts, and master plans. Some land developments continue without subdivision permits and development permits. And in some cases, you actually have people whose properties have been demolished being earmarked as illegal, having evidence of them paying rates to city council. So now one would really wonder why the city council would collect rates on what they call illegal settlements. This really exposes the role of corruption in power systems and all this. There's a theory which was put forward by one of the analysts through the Human Rights Watch, described the demolitions in 2005 having a knack of revenge or retaliation on the urban voters who had elected the opposition, who had really voted for the opposition during that same year. So it could really be the case with these current demolitions, because you can imagine a situation where blame is shifted from one political party to another. One political party being blamed for allowing illegal structures to mushroom, and another political party offering solutions like regularization and giving people grace periods to take care of their property. So then one really wonders if it is a case of politricks. The weight of the undeserving victims clearly is not comparable to the effects. So some interesting findings during this research on how these demolitions were conducted. We saw that a notice period was given. However, it was really, really small. People were only given 48 hours to vacate their premises, to demolish their structures. The local authorities, together with police, also used bulldozers and excavators to tear down and mow down property, which was really an inhumane way of doing things. Also, taking into account that we were during the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and 2021, where we really had a social crisis and an economic crisis. Most of the people had lost their source of living. Now they're having to lose their homes and they have no roof over their heads anymore, and they're exposed to the pandemic. Ironically, where we had orders to stay at home through lockdowns. Also, worth noting is that no alternative temporary shelter was provided for victims. Some shelter was provided only after there was an outroar on social media and through political analysts and activism. So the adverse impacts of these demolitions, especially regarding the brutal way in which they were conducted, is we are noticing massive loss of shelter, exposure to diseases and unsafe sanitation, loss of livelihoods and ways of living. Therefore, we're going to be seeing an increased food security. We call it urban hunger commonly, I guess. And already there are soup kitchens popping up in the high density areas trying to help some of these people. Those scars can be seen on the psychological well-being of children who have witnessed their homes being destroyed. And clearly, there are education has been disrupted because they can no longer attend school. So this really pumps into and it oils the machine of generational poverty. So in terms of security of tenure, for those who are watching and for the rest of Zimbabwe who are trying to access land, they really then deem safe access to land as an illusion when those people who are in power through government offices abuse it and let corruption rot the core of the land administration systems. So as a result, people simply stop trusting the system and believing in the existence of fair rule of law. We were shown this by the recent survey by Afrobarometer, which showed that a significant number of Zimbabweans really do not have trust in the government and those in power. So as a permanent result, you realize a slowdown. So in terms of perceptions of security of tenure, the most significant effect is going to be a slowdown in investment of land, since a lot of people are not going to be interested in land ownership, especially in urban areas, as they live under the fear of what they think is regulated, and suddenly it is deemed unregulated and it's destroyed. So what really went wrong? How were these demolitions supposed to be conducted? Clearly, they were supposed to be done in a more humane way, guided by a policy, the human settlement policy, which was developed in 2019 by the Ministry of Local Government and Housing and Social Amenities, guaranteeing people and protecting the rights to shelter. So if you give people enough grace period for relocations, allocating other temporary accommodation, it would really help during a planned demolition. So this really also goes against the principles that was trying to set through the Sustainable Development Goals for sustainable communities. The other significant, this lack of dialogue really goes against the principles that we're trying to set through the Food and Agricultural Organization, for example, its voluntary guidelines on governance, sustainable governance of tenure. As a lesson, demolitions should be done procedurally and lawfully when they are necessary. And as for the people, the public, adequate due diligence is really required before investing into housing developments, because it is really our duty to scrutinize a system and how it works, since citizens are in another way part of government. Thank you for this opportunity, and I apologize for the various technical problems that I was encountering.
I think Mr. Parry, you can just ask your question. I'm not sure Mr. Tonde is.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mate. My name is Geno Paraza, and I work at the Public Affairs Research Institute Land Program. I just wanted to understand from your presentation the rule of the courts, because I understood that there were some lawyers for human rights in Zimbabwe that managed to get a court order to hold some of these demolitions. I'd like to understand from you if this is true and to what extent this can be used as one of the strategies to mitigate the vulnerability of the public. Thank you.
Thank you for that question, ma'am. With regards to the legality of these demolitions, inquiries were done, and there are certain conditions that allow for demolitions, especially, for example, the notable one in this case was if the administrator of the Ministry of Health deems a health emergency being caused by a certain population pattern, yes, demolitions and evictions can be put in place. So other factors were also queried to do with the legality of these demolitions, and really most of them did not sail through, because of the involvement of political parties and local authorities, because some of the people whose properties had been demolished were afforded temporary accommodation because of this. And some of the demolitions were indeed halted, it is true, after these inquiries. Hello?
Yeah,
Can anyone hear me?
yeah, there are other questions. There's one question in the chat asking if there are any alternatives to demolition. And there is one question from my side. What is the legacy of power in the demolition procedure in Zimbabwe?
Okay, I'll start with the question from Timothy Waji. Are there any alternatives to demolition? Yes. The first alternative is regularizing, where possible, the structures that are deemed illegal. The second and most viable option is relocating. For example, there are informal businesses which are operating along road servitudes. Instead of destroying that property, basically destroying the livelihood of those people, the local authority, the government really through local authority, could have alternatively relocated those people and afforded them enough space to set up their businesses, vending shades, for example. Some efforts have been done to provide these. However, these are not appropriately located and they're not enough. So also, not really as an alternative to demolition, but as a way to aid these demolitions, as a significantly long grace period should be given, also including a lot of dialogue between these would-be victims and the authority, which is demolishing these structures. So I did not get the second question. May you please repeat?
Yeah, the second question was related to the legacy of power in this demolition procedure. And there is also another question related to the fact that is demolition not a sign of weakness of urban planning? And with your experience, what could be done in order to build a better future for in Zimbabwe in terms of to avoid this type of phenomenon?
Yes, thank you. So really, power plays an important role because the people who let or who distribute land which is on unregulated space, like wetlands, for example, under power lines, too close to railways, are land barons. And these land barons are protected by people in power. Some of these land barons are actually the people in power, as outlined by the Commission of Inquiry, which was instituted by government. So really that is the role of power, because if you then afford people accommodation and settlement, they are inclined to vote for you again because they feel like if they do not, they will lose you. As for the second question on what can be done, especially showing that demolitions are a sign of poor planning, yes, I agree. Harare is a growing city because of rural to urban migration and also migration from smaller cities to Harare. Decentralizing services is one solution that might attract people from away from Harare to other service areas. But the challenge that we're facing with this is that not enough services are being decentralized, and therefore the market really remains in Harare and people gravitate still towards the capital. This is not only a problem in Zimbabwe, it is also being witnessed in Nigeria, where a lot of people are really crowding towards Lagos. So in terms of planning, where people can, I'm sorry for that, where the government notices that people are occupying unregulated land, it is quite imperative to then investigate that land and and try to adequately and properly plan it so that you then allow people to settle with that land with adequate service provision. Because without planning for that land, then it is almost impossible to then provide the services. So various organizations are really trying to be innovative with their approaches to land governance. For example, the Zimbabwe Institute of Geomatics has proffered many position papers to aid the government on innovative approaches and other technologies to do with geomatics that really help the government in planning. However, we are still to see that implementation. So I guess that is how planning, innovation, and power play a role in these demolitions.
Yeah, I can see in the chat that there is this comment from Florence saying that the experience from Zimbabwe is a reflection of the inequality in societies and social injustices. So I don't know if you have a comment on that. And another question is to know what is the what is made out of the demolished spaces. So after demolition, the spaces, what the spaces are used for what in the future after that in Harare?
Thank you for that one. Indeed, you can relate these demolitions to inequality and injustice because most of the people who are affected are the poorest of the poor, those who lack access to land and eternally lack access to rights in land. And when they've acquired those rights, or when they have seemingly acquired those rights, they are again taken away from them. And this disproportionately affects poorer people because they are the ones who are really desperate for land. And if you check through my presentation, the targets for these demolitions are in high density areas and peri-urban, which were previously farms. So the land prices at which these parcels are sold also then are very attractive to people who have a significantly lower income. So yes, indeed, we can relate these demolitions to inequality. Even when we look at the informal businesses which are being demolished, the people who run informal businesses are on the lower income end of society. Then in terms of what the spaces are then used for after demolition, some of them, for example, those along roads are supposed to be used for road expansion because they're road servitudes. It is a valid reason, but it is not a reason valid enough to brutally demolish someone's property. Procedural eviction, procedural relocation should be followed. So in locations, residential locations where demolitions occur, these spaces are then returned to what they are supposed to be on the master plan. If they're supposed to be green spaces, for example, if they're supposed to be wetlands, for example, if they're supposed to be waterways or sewer line ways, then they are returned to that. Some of them are then properly planned later on. However, this does not apply to the demolitions which happened in 2005, where we're saying about 750,000 people lost their homes, because some of these homes were cabins within other people's yards. So that was just a loss of property and that space cannot be reclaimed. I hope I have answered that adequately.
Yeah, for my end here, I hope it's the case for the other participants. There is also one I think from Parazza, can you comment on why there is increasing demand for Zimbabwean land by foreigners? She means Chinese under these conditions. And from Chimoti, there is also this comment on slum upgrading schemes are also another viable options. Human habitat can be of tremendous help here. So back to you, Mr. Tando.
Yes, thank you very much. So indeed, there's an increasing demand for Zimbabwean land by foreigners because after all is said and done, land is power, land is capital. It is economic capital and social capital. Whoever owns land has freedom and has a chance at prosperity. Once you own land, you own it forever, and its interests and rise therein are stuck with you forever. Therefore, in Zimbabwe now specifically, our land is resource rich in terms of minerals and also in agricultural viability. So everyone is interested in land, both locals and foreigners. So the question here, I guess, would be why foreigners seem to be having more access than locals who have eternally been looking for land. In some cases, we have had foreign-based or foreign-backed projects for solar farms, for example, for mineral exploration, for example, displacing communities, especially those governed by customary tenure in communal areas. And really, again, this is a case which needs to be investigated to find out if these displacements are procedural and are following the stipulated regulations, such as, for example, compensation. And then in terms of slum upgrading schemes, yes, definitely, these could help because slum upgrading is literally a process of formalizing what we call slums or squatter camps or illegal development.
Okay, thanks so much, Mr. Tando. Thanks, participants. One hand from Mr. Kenneth. Yes, please, Mr. Kenneth, come in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Facilitator, and to the presenter. You've really transported me back to 2006 when I was at UN Habitat as an intern, and I was looking at the photos from Operation Mutaram's Vida. It was quite horrific. I just want to know, it's been a while now, almost I think 15 years. What has been the legacy of this demolitions on issues around how people now own land, especially poor people? How are they able to access land? Are they able to own it? How are they able to use it, especially around urban areas like Harare? Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Kenneth Odari. In terms of legacy for the operation specifically that you gave as an example, and I guess relating to all other demolition exercises, poor people have always had a challenge with accessing land. And with the example that you gave of the capital city of Harare, the high cost of land has really been a challenge, not only for poor people, but from also including those in the middle class. That will always be a challenge. So there are some schemes, however, that are popping up, which try to assist financing to access housing. This is being done through banks, and some of these schemes are accessible to civil servants, which make up most of the middle class, and some in the lower income class. But the effectiveness of this really is difficult to appreciate, given that we are having more problems than solutions. We are having more failures than successes, especially to do with access to land. And there are also a lot of associated challenges for lower income individuals, which are to do with the lack of knowledge. Most of the public lack knowledge and awareness on how to safely secure property and land in Zimbabwe. We now have cases of individuals, quite a number of them, purchasing communal land, which is being sold by, again, poor populations who are trying to make a few dollars out of it. When communal land, for example, is not for sale. Therefore, when you access this land, you find it very cheap with an attractive price. And because you lack the knowledge on this, you proceed to purchase this land. And within the next few months, years, no one knows, the government will again come to demolish because they deem you as not the rightful owner of communal land. Communal land is owned by the government. This is the case not only for Zimbabwe again, but for Africa as a whole, where we see communal and customary tenure holding quite a strong fortress. So in terms of legacy, really, it is difficult to comprehend the positive aspects of it.
Thank you again, Mr. Dando. I think we are really on time. Thanks again for all your valuable questions. And yeah, we hope to see you in the coming session starting in 2 minutes of time. So thank you, and hopefully see you later. Goodbye.